push yourself to go to a new place every season. Try something new, learn something new to keep expanding your horizon and keep it fresh.
Awesome. I like that. And even it might be a new place within the park that you normally go, because so often we go where we know. Imagine a place where stress fades, fresh air fills your lungs, and adventure awaits around every corner. Welcome to Think Outside, the podcast that inspires you to explore, connect, and embrace the outdoors. Welcome to Think Outside with the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation. I'm Marci Mowery, your host, and with me today is Secretary Cindy Adams Dunn of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Welcome, Cindy.
Hello, and good to be here.
We're so happy that you're here. And I just want to describe, we're in the Rachel Carson State Office building. Rode the elevator to the 7th floor. You get off of the elevator and there's this beautiful wood paneling of Pennsylvania woods, posters about the Civilian Conservation Corps. And then there's a mission statement about the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, which says we conserve and sustain PA natural resources for today and future generations' use and enjoyment. Let's start there. Tell me a little bit about who the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources is and what you do.
It's interesting. You mentioned, walking in past Rachel Carson's portrait every day, and I love that. I love to look at her face and think about what she stands for. And then I hit the button. I mean, if I'm not carrying too much, I'll walk up to the 7th floor, but I'm usually carrying too much with a laptop and a day pack and all that. But I love getting out of the elevator and seeing the chestnut wood that is part of our exhibit here and seeing the faces of conservation heritage and history that really make the backbone and continuum of the mission we're living today and the work that we do today. So for us at DCNR as staff, we're the trustees of the Commonwealth's natural resources, the forests, the parks, the geologic resources, and the natural heritage, the biota of the state. We have the Conservation Heritage Program, which has plants and animals, and we track them and manage endangered species, et cetera. So, and this is for all people, including generations yet to come. And interestingly, we're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year, and our mission statement that you read is built right on top of the constitutional amendment, Article 1, Section 27, that really guarantees the natural resources for all people, including generations yet to come. So it's all one big continuum of stewardship.
And I think we're one of only a few states that has such a constitutional amendment.
Absolutely right. And it's interesting. And, as you think about our history, and you think about Rachel Carson, you think about Joseph Rothrock technically, but Rothrock is what we say. This environmental movement, this conservation movement that led to the constitutional amendment came about because of our history of timbering coal and gas. I mean, we had these wealth of natural resources like carbon-based resources, oil and gas, and like the timber that really built the Industrial Revolution of the United States. But because of those wealth of resources for the economy, we saw such destruction at a mass level. And that spawned the conservation movement. So this all fits together. It's all very interesting.
It really is. And you mentioned seeing Rachel Carson in the foyer of the Rachel Carson State Office building, but also standing there signing in. As you look around, you're surrounded by conservation leaders, a variety of names. So it really is inspiring to walk into the building.
It is. I mean, it kind of calls you to higher calling, so to speak. You're following the footprints of many leaders ahead of you and many people behind who really it's our job to engage and inspire. I mean, we look at sustainability in a couple of ways. We look at sustainability of the forest system. It has to be well planned, thought out, using the best of the ecological principles. The sustainability financially of a state park system, which your organization, Pennsylvania Park and Forest Foundation, has been tremendously helpful in raising awareness about the financial needs of keeping this public park and forest system available for people. And then you think about the human side, the workforce sustainability. You've got to spawn the conservation leaders behind you, a citizenry who cares and understands conservation environment, who will enjoy it, appreciate it, and then work to maintain it and preserve it.
Yeah, it's so important for people to realize that they have a voice in protecting the assets that we have here in the state.
They really do. I think if people realize just how powerful one voice can be, better yet, your voice and a few friends, better yet, an organization. I think people realize how powerful and significant that is. More people would get involved.
It's interesting. I was having a conversation with Dr. Alan Dietrich Ward earlier today, who just wrote the book Cradle of Conservation. And we were talking about different examples. And in this case, we're recording this during Women's History Month. So we were talking about women. But, there was a woman who used photography. There was another woman who used writing. There's a lot of different ways that your voice could be a lot of different things. It could be whatever your talents are to communicate a message.
Absolutely. I mean, one thing I see you doing is leading hikes and leading paddling trips for women. And that's a great way to engage people in the outdoors. That's certainly what our staff do in the state parks and forests. We've got 130 educators out there leading programs, teaching people, showing people things, engaging people in experiential learning. But I mean, simply inviting a few friends on a hike is actually a conservation advocacy action.
Truly it is. Well, let's talk a little bit about the state parks and state forests, because we're sitting here in this room. It's a lab of some sort. I forget what it's called.
It's called a collab. They use the word collab. It's supposed to be a collaboration space.
Okay, excellent. I love that idea. But I'm looking at this rather large map that outlines the 20 forest districts. It shows the 125 state parks. I'm depicting, I guess, game lands and Allegheny National Forest. So it really is this massive array of public space. And you mentioned that at one point, it wasn't like that. So we could go back to like 1893 when the law was passed to create a forest reserve and the first state park was acquired. So can we talk a little bit about these spaces, these parks, these forests?
Absolutely. And what's interesting is one of the efforts we're doing right now is deepening and enriching the stories for all these public lands. So it's fun for me. I mean, I've been over the public lands many times. My dad worked in the old forest and waters. So even as a kid, I was visiting a lot of public lands. So you think you know them. And then you start to really know them, both the ecological side, but also the untold stories. But yeah, the public lands of Pennsylvania, it's funny, they came out of the ashes of the ruins of a cut over and burned over forest system that motivated people like Joseph T. Rothrock and Lloyd to become, first citizen activists. I mean, Rothrock was in a civic side of the forestry movement first, giving botany lessons and forestry lectures. Lloyd, same thing, slideshows at the Civic Center that she helped found in Harrisburg here about beautiful cities in Europe and the civic movement for more beautiful cities in the United States. And then she was a trained botanist and became active in forestry and was the first woman appointed in the country to a forest commission. But both of them started on the civic side, on the volunteer side, before they had appointed roles. Of course, Joseph T. Rothrock as the first commissioner for forestry and Lloyd as a member of the commission. But in those roles, I think about the land acquisition and land conservation we do today. They made a tremendous inroad in public lands in the first 10 years and 20 years of the commission. They were out there buying acreage that was cut over, burned over, and cheap. But they bought a lot of land and conserved it. And really, if you look at the first couple of decades of that commission, they had almost 1 million acres conserved, which is remarkable. When you think about Lloyd, she traveled, I think, by train and then by buggy.
And
look at this land and a skirt.
And heeled boots.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that.
Yeah. We had sort of kind of a impromptu dress up like a conservation heritage figure around the office here last year, and I dressed as Mira Lloyd dog. I had to dig deep in the closet to pull that one off, but I had a day dressed like that, and that was plenty. That's how she went around the woods. It was just pretty amazing. And again, self-trained botanist. She had to go to Europe to get her education. Yeah, she's a privileged person, but she used that privilege for such a good cause. And, and coming out of the forest as we later in the 1900s entered the Depression era and more people needed to recreate outdoors, the need for state parks became really clear. And as you and I have talked about many times, Valley Forge being our first state park, kind of emerging as a first state park piece of public land. And then later, it's funny, in the Depression era with the advent of the CCC camps and the building of much of the infrastructure, even today's state park system. I mean, you can look at our park and forest system today and find a lot of the CCC structures.
Absolutely.
I mean, including the dams, which is interesting. I mean, I think about how much science we put into management of infrastructure and things like dams. And to think of the CCC building them pretty darn good. Pretty amazing stuff.
Yes. I think of the dam at Greenwood Furnace State Park. I think
beautiful.
That is such a beautiful dam.
It really is.
Made by the boys, as they were called, of the Civilian Conservation Corps.
Yeah, it's kind of neat to think about that. I mean, something that's interesting and something to be proud of. We did have the highest number of African-American CCC camps. I mean, unfortunately, camps were segregated in the day, but we did have a lot of Black CCC camps. And the cities, we had crews of boys from the rural areas and young men. I mean, they were trained up and they learned discipline of hard work and they got things done and they had something to really brag about, a point of pride. They really grew into manhood, building and doing things together. And it really, ironically, the trained CCC camps and the young men who were trained up and disciplined to work as teams was probably a factor in World War II and the success because we had people kind of army ready, so to speak.
Yes, quite a few. I believe the number is 191,000 CCC boys in Pennsylvania alone. We were second only to California in terms of the number of boys that we had. My aunt used to tell a story of dance nights. She'd go to, in Blaine, there was a CCC camp and they would go to dance nights because there were young men there.
And they were probably in good physical shape.
Exactly.
They probably looked pretty good.
Manual labor.
Yeah, I could imagine. Well, that was interesting. And actually, when you look at the Black CCC camps, it's fascinating. So when you have Black communities in the matrix of a rural landscape, the heart of that was probably a Black CCC camp. So it really helped bring more ethnic diversity to our landscape than we would have had, which is valuable.
Yeah, and we can hold Penn Roosevelt up as one of those. And we'll put in the show notes a link to some of the articles that have been done by both PPFF and DCNR about these camps, because they really did a lot of good work. You mentioned about this acquisition of land early on. And I want to point out for the listeners that, at the time this land was being purchased, there was a lot of wildfires, there was flooding, our water quality was compromised because trees provide such a significant role in managing water quality, reducing flooding. So as lands were being acquired, they were being acquired to protect water. But that's still something that the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources is doing today, is looking at what we call riparian plantings. Can you talk a little bit about your role in water quality?
Absolutely. It's funny you'd say that. I was just reading about the Adirondacks last night, and I'd love to go up there for vacations in the heat of the summer. And the Adirondacks were preserved to save water in the Mohawk River, which also I didn't fully appreciate. Of course, the headwaters of the Hudson are up there. And we think about New York City and all the population base below in the Hudson and along the Mohawk and Albany and in that metro area, the water was critical. But here in Pennsylvania, the main motivator, like you said, was water quality, was runoff from the hillsides, polluting the water in the towns, making it difficult to get good, clean drinking water. So that motivated the forestry movement in the beginning, and it still does. We've launched an effort, a significant effort to plant riparian buffers, streamside buffers along Pennsylvania's waterways, and was motivated initially by the Chesapeake Bay cleanup and our commitment to clean up the Susquehanna drainage. And these buffers are the most cost-effective way to filter out nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment from water entering our waterways in Pennsylvania. It's a statewide program because we also consider the Great Lakes important, the Delaware important. We consider the Ohio important. So cleaning up all of our waterways. When you think about a streamside buffer, you have forests and trees along water. It has this dual benefit of shading the stream as well, keeping it cooler. And our Pennsylvania fish, the brook trout, depends on cold water. So the more we can keep our streams cool, the better our state fish will do, the brook trout. And of course, the more filtered the water is, the less you'll have to pay as a water consumer to get it in a drinkable state. So it's just good all around. But I think we'd like to see more forest cover in Pennsylvania, especially along streams, but also in our communities, our towns and cities, because of increasingly hot summer climate. No, actually, year-round climate, but especially in the summertime, summer heat can kill. An urban environment with all the pavement and development, and especially add to it housing stock that maybe is old, maybe doesn't have good air conditioner or any air conditioning, you've really got to try to cool down the street. And if you can get about 40% shade on a given street, it'll be 10 to 20 degrees cooler.
That's significant.
It's very significant. It can save lives. And it's funny, like people think about tornadoes and hurricanes as being the most deadly weather event, but actually the most deadly weather event is summer heat.
Yeah, I could see that. That. And I often think when there's like one or two trees in a parking lot, you see all the cars vying to park under those trees. I mean, so it's obvious that the tree has a role, and I don't understand why we're not more actively advocating as citizens and demanding like we want trees in our communities.
I'm with you. We at DCNR, we have a grant program that funds community parks. And it's great. We had an $80 million grant release last fall, which is amazing. And it's just wonderful. This year, I'll get to go around and see the communities that benefited with everything from new ball fields to trails to playgrounds to local parks, swimming pools, you name it. But it's community parks often have things like soccer fields, and there'll be just a few trees. And I've always wondered why they don't plant more trees around their perimeter, because the parents will have their canvas seats all around the tree, and they'll move to catch that little bit of shadow the lollipop tree puts up. It's like, why don't you have more trees?
Yes, we're all shade seekers. Hard to say fast.
I know.
We will be in April. There is a day that was designated in 1961 by the General Assembly. It's actually a week as the Joseph Trimble Rothrock Memorial Conservation Week, in recognition of Dr. Rothrock's work in conservation. But, he also was a medical doctor and saw that connection between health and the outdoors. As part of that piece of legislation, it says that citizens shall be encouraged to consider through suitable activities the broader subject of the conservation of all the natural resources from which the wealth of the Commonwealth is derived. When you hear that, what are some things that pop into your head about ways that citizens can consider the broader subject of conservation?
Well, that's a great question. And that's kind of a call to action today, both for people to come and visit the state forest and parks that they own. I mean, the structure of ownership of our public lands is this: they're owned by the citizens and are stewarded by DCNR. And volunteer groups like your friends groups at PPFF help steward them. But it really calls on us to reach out and engage more with people, to bring them in and to teach them and create the opportunities for learning. People need to take their part of the step and show up and sign up for something, sign up for a program, show up. learn something, read something. But on our end, we need to make these public spaces welcoming for all and make sure everyone gets a chance to learn something while they're there. I mean, it's great when people come to a park and have a picnic. That's wonderful. It's pleasant, it's relaxing, but even better, just learn one thing with every visit.
That's a good challenge to put out there for people because there's normally interpretive panels. There might be an education program going on. And even if you're there just as a day user, you're still able to participate in those programs. There might be a nature center or visitor center. So a lot of different ways that you can learn either at that park or that forest.
Absolutely. I mean, the park maps that are available in the kiosk have good information written on them. Thankfully, we got more and more bilingual maps so that if you're a Spanish speaker, it's also possible to read. Like you mentioned, the interpretive signage that's along a lot of trails. You see a staff person, even if they're not, one of our educators, our maintenance people know a lot, our rangers know a lot, our managers. Anyone you see is happy to help. And increasingly, there are more and more apps on your phone. If you're a person that looks at your phone and you've got a signal, you can learn with the various nature apps that are available there. And just be observant and absorbent, to sit and absorb the sounds, the smells, the appearance, the relaxation. I know for me, I go to Pine Grove Fern State Park a lot. I go to Gifford Pinchot State Park a lot because that's, because of where I live. But it's like sitting there and looking at the water, something just about water, little waves on water is so relaxing, a little bit of a breeze. I can decompress the stress of the week with this sitting still and listening.
Absolutely. I find as soon as I step into a park or a forest that my whole being changes.
It does.
Yeah.
And I think you and I both spent a lot of times in the outdoors. And I think you can condition yourself to decompress and relax and breathe and take it in faster. And if you're a new park and forest user, maybe that won't come right away. Yeah, you get more comfortable with the environment. You get more aware of how much more relaxing time in nature is than time in a built environment. But the nice thing is science is really bearing that out. The more and more studies are showing the value of nature, the value of time outdoors is good for your mental health and physical health. And there's measurable physiological differences in your body when you spend time in nature.
Absolutely.
I mean, think about it. I mean, humans evolved in nature. We have an unnatural lives today in the built environment. That's not the environment where we evolved. But time in nature is really valuable to get whatever dose of it you can get every week.
Vitamin N, they call that.
Vitamin N, absolutely. I can get it in my backyard. This time of year, we all started going out into our backyard. And that's something, to think about too. You can bring nature into your backyard. You can think of your backyard as an extension of the public land and to try to have native plants and to try to create habitat for pollinators and birds and to try to extend the natural environment into wherever you live, whether it's an urban environment or a suburban environment or whether you're in a rural environment. You can extend the natural environment into your life.
And didn't I recently read that there is a program right now to help people replace invasive plants with native and to convert lawns to meadows?
Absolutely. We're trying harder and harder to expand the green footprint of nature across Pennsylvania. And so the offer we're launching here shortly is that you remove an invasive and we'll send you a handful of native replacements.
Awesome.
So it's a good paradigm. So some people will do that with us, and some people will just take that idea and do it. And one of us bought a piece of land that has a lot of invasives, and people are guilty about that or feel guilty about that once they learn about native plants. But the way I look at it, when I'm ready to replace something, I do it gradually. You can't tear up your whole yard at once and make it right. You got to do it piecemeal. But the other thing is we have so much lawn. I mean, when you look around, you just drive anywhere, you see this useless lawn. Yeah, if you need a play field, you need a lawn. Sure. Got that. But most of it's just a social cultural thing. It serves no benefit to pollinators. It really, water runs off of it too much. It'd be much better to have some native vegetation, especially some woody vegetation. And it serves no habitat benefit for wildlife. So we do have a Law in the Meadows program. We're seeking more funding for it. We have the Keystone Tree Fund. And in a couple of weeks, we'll be talking about ways that people can help replenish that fund. But the idea is to do these big meadow conversions to really transform a lot of that useless space to natural space. And it can be beautiful.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I find, as much as I love the forest, I do like the dancing of a meadow and watching a plant sway in the breeze. And in several of our parks, we have been converting lawn to meadow.
Right.
And it reduces costs, it reduces pollution, and it provides critical habitat for not just insects and pollinating species, but for different type of birds as well.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the ones I enjoy the most is a Boyd Big Tree just north of Harrisburg. Nice meadow habitat there, and the birding is phenomenal. You can see bluebirds and tree swallows. Little Buffalo has some nice meadow habitat. My brother was saying saw a meadowlark up there recently. Right now, the woodcock are up there, which is cool. You've never seen woodcock sing in the evening, like at dusk. Raccoon Creek State Park out beyond Pittsburgh, great native plant and meadow habitats. Many of the parks have it. It's good to see, but also people can convert some of their property to meadow with little determination and some work.
Yeah, and there's a philosophy that, I forget the word, but it's like homegrown national park, I think, where we're all like a piece of a puzzle and we're taking our piece and we're creating it. But if we're working collectively with our neighbors, we can create this contiguous habitat.
I saw that, Doug Tallamy, who's done so many lectures on native plant and wildlife, he created that movement. I think, homegrown national park. I think if you search that, you'll find it. It's pretty cool. And if you spend a little time in your backyard or in a park, just observing closely, you'll find this myriad of life that you don't even know is there at a glance. I mean, the things that are in the leaf stuff, the small insects, and the small plants that don't get as much attention. But there's a lot going on in nature at all times, and that's what's interesting too about managing the public lands. It's getting more challenging with time because of invasive species, because of climate change, because of increased wildfire danger, because of more flooding. It's more challenging than ever, but the science behind management of land is better than ever too. So we have more tools. We've built up the resource management side of state parks a lot recently. In the last decade, we've really enhanced and increased both the aquatic and terrestrial resource management side. And of course, in forestry, it's all about, ecological resource management. So we've got good trained scientists that are doing the best. But I do consider it like pretty amazing that a group of dedicated professionals can manage so much land and do it so well. And when I think about Joseph T. Rothrock, Lloyd, Doc Goddard, Rachel Carson, all these legacy figures in our history, that's kind of the continuum of their work.
Yeah, truly it is. And I applaud the work that is done by our park and forest staff, but also, there are other bureaus within DCNR, facility design and construction, recreation and conservation, topographic and geologic information systems. And it's a lot to manage. Pennsylvania is a big state.
It is.
So I applaud them and thank them for their work because it, as we mentioned earlier, it benefits not just me today, but it benefits future generations.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you talk about facilities design and construction, that's our group of engineers and landscape architects, electricians that focus a lot on the very significant infrastructure we have in the park and forest system. But increasingly, we're committing to green practices. We're putting solar arrays up to take the parks to net zero. We're planting natives. When we do a new building, put it right in the contract to do native plantings right around it, looking at green infrastructure and water runoff, the movement of water through a property. looking at reducing the electricity demand of every little element of it. So their job has gotten more complex. But the good news, because of the efficiency we get from their good work, it puts more money out into the resource and less money into the buildings. I mean, the buildings are there to support the mission and are needed, but that's not why the park is there. It's really the outdoor experience. And so we get that. And of course, our Bureau of Geological Survey is phenomenal. They always say, well, it all begins with rocks. And it's true. You really do have to understand geology and hydrogeology to really understand the rest of the system. And they provide all that information to everybody for free. And the Bureau of Recreation and Conservation, like I said, we have a very positive and good grant program. And it has served over the years thousands of municipalities across the Commonwealth and nonprofits. And the conservation work, the recreation work that gets done and gets matched by local dollars is phenomenal. And I just love seeing the projects that are built using this support from the state. And it's critical to keep that going and to look at ways to enhance it.
The community in which I live recently put in a greenway along a waterway, and then giving people the ability to walk from the community down to the Cana de Gwinnett Creek, and then there's a boat launch. And it's amazing to see how many people are now walking on it because it's much easier to traverse.
I got to see that at the ribbon cutting. That was pretty amazing work they did there. I mean, and plus they planted some good new trees along the way to help slow down the water.
Yes.
The walkway is beautiful. It's a fairly steep slope, and the walkway makes it very accessible. And that boat ramp used to just be a muddy slide, to get down into the creek. And
yes.
you could count on getting like muddy up to your calf. And now it's just a beautiful boat ramp. And that little kayak run from that park down to the Susquehanna is pretty amazing. So those little elements of accessibility make a huge difference in people's day-to-day lives that have recreation close to home. But like switching back to the state parks, we have a proposal right now to add our first underground state park, Laurel Caverns, which will be phenomenal. If we could do that on DCNR's 30th anniversary, which is this year, that would just be amazing.
That would be great.
To have the first, our first underground park. So our Geologic Survey Office is wildly enthused about having that as part of Pennsylvania's legacy. I mean, after all, we got caverns in the state, but we don't have a publicly owned cavern. So it's part of our legacy in Pennsylvania. So it'd be great to have that in the system.
And I was reading a little bit about that. It's one of the larger caverns, but it's also a hibernacula for bats.
Yes. And obviously, we'll be managing it very carefully for the bats. The current owner manages very carefully for the bats. It is actually closed during the season of hibernation and open when the bats have done hibernating. So we'll look at the bat species and understand their cycle. But right now, I think the owner has it closed until April. And it closes again October, November.
We're so appreciative that the owner does that because we've lost so many bats and they're so critical to insect management and just they're part of the ecosystem.
They're a really important part of the ecosystem, and they've been affected more than a lot of wildlife by disease and disease has been spread by climate change.
Yeah. It all circles back, doesn't it? Well, we want to end on a happy note.
Let's do that.
So we like to have a think outside gem, a little piece of information, a little inside scoop, so to speak, something that would help the listening public better enjoy their state parks and state forests or their community recreation, because we know that people are engaging in their community possibly on a day-to-day basis. And then those parks and forests are there for more long-term enjoyment. So what would your gem be?
My gem, wow. Well, my gem would be push yourself to go to a new place every season. Try something new, learn something new to keep expanding your horizon and keep it fresh.
Awesome. I like that. And even it might be a new place within the park that you normally go, because so often we go where we know.
Totally right. I agree.
Yeah.
It's funny. I go down to Pine Grove Furnace and Meadow a lot, and so I like to say I know that park and I know that forest. But the truth is, there's a lot I haven't explored, and And I do push myself to try a different trail, to do something a little different. But I'm going to make that more of a resolution because I don't want to get complacent and think I know anything. You always got to push yourself to know a little more, learn a little more, because that keeps you, stay curious. I guess it's a specific way of staying curious.
Yeah, and not only staying curious, it gives you an option if you go to your favorite trailhead and it's packed.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have other tools in your tool belt that you can go somewhere else.
Absolutely.
Different.
There's always an adventure to be had.
Excellent. That's a great note to end on. Secretary Dunn, thank you for joining us here on Think Outside. We appreciate your time and all the work that you and your staff at the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources does. And we want to congratulate you on your 30th anniversary as well.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me, and get out there and do something new.
Thank you for listening to Think Outside, where every episode invites you to discover new places, build confidence, and find inspiration in nature. Love the show? Subscribe for more inspiration, share with a fellow explorer, and let's keep thinking outside together. For more resources and inspiration, visit thinkoutside.podcast.org.